What's good, Ohio Cannabis Report family? It's your boy Gerald Moore Jr. Back to you guys with another episode. Thank you guys for all of the follows and subscriptions to the channel. We really appreciate you guys. Again, I'm trying to bring you guys as much news and content and entertainment as possible with all the things happening in the Ohio cannabis industry and the national cannabis landscape. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk going on in Ohio and nationally about the hemp ban to open as part of the Congress's bill to reopen uh, the federal government. So we're going to talk about that today. Again, just for disclaimer, this is for news, entertainment, and educational purposes only. We are not selling anything on this page. So again, this is for entertainment, news, and information purposes only. Again, make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I think we're up to about 135 subscriptions on this new YouTube. Make sure you follow us on Facebook, Instagram at Ohio Cannabis Report. We're also on Substack, Patreon. Um, yeah, and I think that's about it. But again, we're always looking to connect with people in the community. If you have a small business, if you have a nonprofit, if you're doing any work in the cannabis industry to educate the community, help people learn more in the stigma, we would love to have you on the show. So please contact me through the DMs, or you can contact me through the comments, or you can reach out to me via email at ohiocannabisreport@gmail.com. And so we like to have as many voices on the panel discussions and on the show as possible. Obviously, I understand a lot of people don't want to put their faces out there, voices out there, which is obviously understood depending on what you're doing. I also do interviews that aren't live as well. So if you want to do an interview that isn't live or goes live stream, we could do that as well. I like to share stories and just hear people's backgrounds, especially for medical patients, people who've had run-ins with the law because of cannabis charges, people who've been impacted by the war on drugs, and people just who have interesting story. You know what I mean? I'm a former football player, Division I All-American athlete, tried out for the NFL, so I know what it's like to kind of have the spotlight on you and not be able to necessarily determine the narrative that society or the media puts on you because of something that you've done, right? So I was consuming cannabis the majority of my college career and my professional career, and I found that it benefited me in many different ways. I also studied healthcare, so I understood that the pills, the opioids were a lot more dangerous long term than cannabis would be. I understood the addiction ramifications of pills, of drugs, over the counter, or prescription. I understood coming from a family plagued by alcoholism and drugs that cannabis was a much more safer alternative for pain management, rest, and even for recreational purposes. But again, as a college athlete, I couldn't express that back then, right? So it was again illegal. We were often drug tested, and I share my story in Courage in Cannabis, this book here by Dr. Bridget Williams. And I share my story about being drug tested numerous times by the NCAA. Um, and so I understand what it's like to be in the limelight. But again, when Ohio legalized and I got my medical card, that gave me the confidence to really come out uh, and put my face out there behind cannabis without, still understanding there was going to be a stigma there, but also understanding that, hey, I can now leverage my story, my experience, my my brand, or whatever I've built as a Division I former professional athlete, and I can leverage that story in the cannabis space to hopefully help end the stigma, but also help educate folks because a lot of people are dealing with a lot of different things, whether it's PTSD, anxiety, pre-existing conditions, any types of trauma, grief, chronic pain, arthritis. People have trouble eating and stuff like that. So again, just using my story, my testimony to help hopefully encourage other people to share their stories, because the more stories we get out there, the more impacts we can have, because people realize like, wow, there must be something to this, right? Like if it's helping this many people with this many different um, ailments and illnesses. And so I think the biggest thing is also educating folks that, hey, smoking weed isn't the only way to get cannabis into your system. There's a lot of different ways. So a lot of people, the stigma is around the smell, the combustion. So I think it's important that we educate folks. There's pills, topicals, um, vapes, obviously, but there's different ways of getting cannabis into the system to help folks navigate the issues that they're dealing with. So TikTok, I'm on my live stream on YouTube. So in YouTube, just know I'm talking to my TikTok. So here, let me bring up this article. Um, and I mean, too, like with me sharing my story, I know it can be very complex. I understand my privilege, and I think a lot of people have to understand their privilege. I am a nonprofit president. Um, I come from, I have my degree. I have started multiple businesses. My wife has a really good job, so I understand my privilege in being able to be outspoken on this topic. But I think also people need to understand like your rights, right? Your civil rights as an American citizen, as a human. And we need more people speaking up and being more vocal about their civil rights, because that's what's being under attack perpetually by the government and these large corporations. And so if you don't stand up for yourself, you can't expect a billionaire to stand up for you. You can't expect a politician to stand up for you. So again, a lot of people have to be willing to make some sacrifices, right? Like there's so many sacrifices that I've had to make personally, whether it's monetarily, whether it's relationships, because I stand in my truth, you know what I mean? And I believe in cannabis, and I don't really get into a lot of the other culture wars on like relationships and who you dating and who you having sex with. That is none of my business, you know what I mean? But when it comes to something like cannabis, I feel like it sits at the intersection of a lot of the social issues that we deal with, right? A lot of the socioeconomic issues. When you talk about poverty, you talk about just the drought in economics, you talk about environmental racism and environmental justice issues. You talk about just sustainability, renewable energy. Again, there's a lot of different things that cannabis really sits at the intersection. Hemp, there's over 50,000 different uses of the hemp plant, right? And so to think that we want to, um, eliminate this plant, while the medicinal benefits, you have healthcare issues, and it's like, come on. But this is why the people have to speak up, right? And unfortunately, there's people in all these different sectors of culture wars that are like, well, I'm fighting for this, but cannabis, no. All right. Or I'm fighting for this, no. And it's like, well, if the oppressed are just going to fight amongst the oppressed, you're making the job really easy for the billionaires, right? And a lot of us are on their platforms. And so you got to get out into, they use the people to do their dirty work, right? So whether you're actually under contract by them, or you are patronizing their platforms in some way, we're doing the work. But we have to understand that we have to leverage these systems to collectively collaborate and dismantle, right? Because if they say they're building the platforms for our good, then we should be able to leverage the platforms for our collective good, right? They shouldn't be extracting all of the resources, all the data, and using it solely to surveil us, and take money away from us without putting that money back into the community, right? So you're putting a data center here, you're putting parts of your business here because you're getting a tax break, you're getting tax abatements, you're getting loans, grants, but then the money that you make, you're not putting back out into the general community, right? So I think people have to understand like the cycle, right? You talk about it's supposed to be trickle down. Well, the money doesn't trickle down because, again, everybody's not getting paid from social media. And the people that are getting paid are usually being pawned to large corporations, large marketing firms, PR firms to do the bidding for the Pepsis, the Eli Lillys, the Procter and Gamble corporations, right? Like there's 5 major corporations that own all the other corporations. So, as people, you got to understand the system. Same thing with cannabis, right? There's like 5 major corporations that own the majority of the brands in most of these states. Um, and so until the people say, fuck all of this, right? This is not how we're going to operate this at a state level, right? Like go to the state, go to your state representative, go to your senator, right? You have to demand accountability. You can do it individually, you can do it in a group of 3, you can do it in a group of 10, a group of 100. But if you demand accountability and let's say 100 people write 100 different emails, make 100 different phone calls, 100 different texts, 100 different people show up to the office, they start feeling the heat. You know what I mean? And that's what they're not feeling right now. And you got to make these politicians feel the heat. So again, leverage your privilege. Everybody don't have the same privilege. White privilege is a hell of a drug. So if you white, use your privilege. Being educated is a privilege, right? Being literate is a privilege. Um, Having opportunities, money, access to building different skills, like in America, like people are privileged, right? You have running water, you have a roof over your head, you have electricity, you got 4G, 5G, Wi-Fi. How do you use your privilege, right? Like, how do you use uh, your skills to impact other people or better impact the community? I picked cannabis because I've been using it for so long, and my family and community have been so fucked up behind it because it's like when I was growing up, everybody was like, "Oh, we're on drugs. Weed is bad." And I started smoking weed, and I'm like, "Yo, this shit is the best shit ever." Like my life was stressful coming out the womb, and I finally found something that and I'm a real chill person normally, but when you got to deal with stress, other people's bullshit, you always got to be on high alert because you don't never know when racism strikes or when bullshit strikes. You got to be like, nigga, you get paranoid, PTSD, you play football, so now they saying, oh, CTE, you got chronic pain. The weed helped with all of that shit. But oh, it's illegal, it's bad. Oh, you can't be a model citizen, right? I'm an all-American. Like, you could look at my shit, I'm an all-American. Like, but you can't be a mentor because you smoking weed. Because little Johnny from the suburbs, dad drinking a Bud Light every 2 minutes. So little Johnny not looking up to his dad to be the role model, but this black kid from where he's from supposed to be the role model, but he's smoking weed, and that's bad. It's a character flaw. But then Peyton Manning could be on the Bud Light commercial. We had a Bud Light commercials going around the stadium at a college football game or a professional football game or on TV, on ESPN, on Disney. So it's like you see how but the players at fault. So once I stopped playing ball, I fell back and I said, shit, that was crazy. Because I was playing before we legalized weed. So, and half of my team was smoking. I was on the low. Like I wouldn't buy no tree. I wasn't selling no tree. I wasn't even rolling that shit up. I give you the money for that shit. You go buy it, you roll it up, we put it in a bong, a bowl, whatever. That up until I would say probably like middle of college, I started being like, nah, I gotta go get my sack, whatever. But I stayed away because I'm like, nah. But once I started to feel the effects, I'm like, nigga, this shit is amazing. What? And then I had some of the best weed in the world from Meigs County. So if you're in Ohio, everybody know Meigs County. You know what I mean? Athens, Ohio. College, what? I'm an All-American at the #1 party school in the country in Meigs fucking County. I fell in love with the weed, right? The best weed. But I couldn't really, I had to be low. Our backup quarterback at the time, biggest dope dealer on the when I got to school, when I got to Ohio University, right? 18, 19 years old. And I could tell the story because it's 15 years ago now. You get to school. I graduated. I graduated, and 2 weeks after high school graduation, I'm in college campus, right? We go to our backup quarterback's apartment. Random day, you got like one class, you do workouts or whatever. And we're going to have a track meet. It's about 20 of us, 20 to 30 of us. Our backup quarterback puts 20 pounds of weed in the center island. And I have never seen that much weed a day in my life. And I look around and I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'm in college. And then motherfuckers start rolling blunt after a 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 blunt. And we had what was called a track meet. And like I said, it was about 20, 30 of us. And the weed just kept going around and around. And I'm like, yo, this is crazy. But I loved it and I felt amazing, right? The next day, I get a call from the head trainer. And when you get a call from the trainer, everybody knows what that means. When you get a call from the trainer, everybody knows what that means. So I didn't pick up. Voicemail. Hey, Gerald, tomorrow we need you to come in for a drug test. Come in at any point in time during the day. Now, I wasn't a superstar, but I was a superstar for my school, right? I was 2 to 3 4-star coming out athlete. So I'm like, fuck. 2-parent household, private school, clean cut. I'm like, fuck. They about to know I'm blowing it down. And I don't really know the repercussions, right? Like, nobody really tells you, like, when the school drug tests you, it's like more like a slap on the wrist. It's more of like, you know what I mean? Like, you fucked up. But people, now we going to watch you. Now you on the list. So we going to drug test you again in a month. And you don't want to be on the, like, you don't want the coaches to have no extra shit up on you, right? And so I'm like, fuck. Like, my parents don't know I smoke. Nobody knows I smoke. Like, I'm upstanding. So I'm like, so I started telling people because I'm like, yo, like, they drug testing. I'm like, I don't know what the fuck to do. So then we had these head shops. So I go to the head shop, buy like one of the largest fucking detox drinks. Fucking chug the detox drink a little bit bigger than this. Chug the detox drink. I just started drinking hella shit. Apple juice. I go to work out, practice, finally go to take the piss test. You know what I mean? And they don't tell you anything unless you fail. So I take the piss test. I tell everybody, like, yo, y'all might want to chill on the weed smoking. They testing. One day go by, nothing. 3 days go by, nothing. People ask, hey, G, they say anything? Nothing. I'm like, coaches ain't saying nothing. You going to meetings, you going to class. You don't know if they gonna call you. What you don't know, nigga. These is like the feds, man. You don't know what's gonna happen. All right, so a week go by and still nothing. Week and a half, still nothing. You going to practice, class, training room, getting tape, getting massage, whatever. Talking to the trainer, nothing. Like, so you finally, like, I'm like, well, shit, I guess I'm in the clear probably like 3 weeks in. So I'm like, whew. So then I'm like, I'm not smoking during the season. You know what I mean? So I started smoking, like, and this was my red shirt year. I ended up red shirt. And so I was nervous because, like, again, I didn't know what would happen. Being a red shirt, nothing would have really happened to me, right? Like, the coaches just would have known I was smoking weed. I wouldn't have lost like a quarter or a game. But if I was playing, typically school drug tests, you might lose a quarter or a half, right? NCAA, though, when the NCAA drug test, you fail a drug test and you lose a whole year of eligibility. So if you fail a drug test for the NCAA, and a failure could be not showing up. So you don't show up to the drug test at 6 a.m. in the morning while they watching you hold your dick and piss in a cup at 18 to 23 years old, you fail. So, and then you lose a whole year of eligibility. So think about this. If you're a junior going into your senior year and you're a prospect to start, or you're a former starter, and you fail a drug test at the bowl game, or you lose a whole year eligibility, you just lost your shot at the NFL. I seen that shit happen. And that's how fucked up. And so, again, that's why I share my story, courage and cannabis. My all-American cannabis story, because I was drug tested by the NCAA probably like 6, 7 times. I was drug tested by the school. Now, again, when I played, I was 4 to 6% body fat. Right? You got to think I'm an elite Division I football player. I played safety, so I'm 6'1". When I got to school, I was probably like 190. When I tried out for the NFL, I was about 215. So again, cannabis sticks to your muscle, right? Usually you did a piss test. So I didn't fail no test. You know what I mean? But I was smoking weed the majority of my time in college. I began to get smarter on my weed consumption. You know what I mean? I just wouldn't smoke as much. Um, but I think it's important, you know what I mean? And again, like, I wasn't this open about my cannabis consumption when I'm a Division I football player, right? Like, we see Kevin Durant, where Kevin Durant's very public about, yo, I'm high right now. Like, I would have definitely been like that, but it was illegal. We didn't have NIL. You know what I mean? Like, my parents wasn't smokers like that. Like, so for me, it was much more just easier to play the clean cut role, because you understand the stigma behind it. But again, once I've been in Ohio I moved back to Ohio, so I've been in Ohio living for a decade now. Me and my wife been in Columbus for 8 years, or Columbus proper for 4 years, around the region 8 years. But once we legalized 6 years ago, that's when I really started to be public about this. That's when I wrote the chapter in the book. That's when I started Ohio Cannabis Report. That's when I started Athletes in Cannabis. Because one, I knew there was a lot of athletes that consume cannabis but didn't have no platforms to express it. Also, a lot of people are self-medicating without really realizing it. They think they're doing it for recreational purposes, which they might be, but there's also very much medicinal purposes for cannabis that a lot of people may not necessarily recognize that they're using it for, right? If you're dealing with grief, if you're dealing with loss, if you're dealing with PTSD, if you're dealing with chronic pain, if you're dealing with some of these issues that a lot of times, and I know in Black communities, African American communities, folks don't necessarily have the best access to healthcare, or the funds for healthcare, for pharmaceuticals. Cannabis is a much more cost-effective way to deal with PTSD, mental health, stress, anxiety, depression, grief, pain. So again, from a cultural perspective, I think that's important when we talk about cannabis in the broader landscape. So, all right, I'm wrapping y'all up. Let me go ahead and go to this article real quick. Congress is set to ban hemp. Ohio may not comply. Let's go ahead and just.
A provision in the congressional deal may impact businesses in Ohio, hemp businesses in particular. Ohio's been debating THC policy for years, with a recent focus on intoxicating hemp with low-level THC.
The U.S. Senate's deal banned the product. Columbus Bureau reporter Morgan Trow has been covering each development with marijuana hemp policy in our state, and she says that everyone from sellers to legislative leaders is evaluating these impacts.
House will be in order.
As the federal government shutdown looks like it's coming to an end,
it's not fair.
Hemp sellers like Meredith Farrow were surprised by the Senate. When voting to open the government, they closed a loophole created in the 2018 Farm Bill, which allowed for low-level THC products to be sold without regulation.
So it would put all my employees out of business and me out of business. And our hundreds and hundreds and hundreds, thousands and thousands of customers that rely on this daily, they would be in a lurch.
Just last month, Governor Mike DeWine signed a temporary ban on hemp that gets you high. It can look like candy sold at gas stations and smoke shops with no age limits. But a judge temporarily blocked DeWine's ban.
If I kind of knew I could make a decision and pivot, but being in limbo is the worst place to be.
Rep. Tex Fisher of the Youngstown area has been leading the charge to protect hemp products and says that Congress threw a wrench in his plans.
Trying to figure out how to implement what's going on at the federal level, so I think that's maybe pump the brakes a little bit while we try to figure out how to proceed based on that.
But marijuana industry expert Jonathan Adler explains that the federal policy doesn't have to impact Ohio sellers. He says that hemp policy will likely be dealt with on a state level, like marijuana.
While marijuana is illegal for purposes of federal law, the federal government doesn't have the resources, doesn't have the personnel to go after individual retailers, individual buyers, let alone individual users.
Adrian Robbins supports legal marijuana, but is anti-hemp and says that the ban should be enforced in Ohio.
We think this is an issue of public health for both adults and
She works
children
for
to be clear
OCAN, by
when
the
it
way.
comes to these unregulated products.
But if we aren't enforcing federal law with marijuana,
should we be enforcing it with hemp?
Yeah, it's a good question. In fact, a couple of people asked that today. It's like, well, we can do whatever we want regarding hemp. Now, are we going to go around and start cuffing 17-year-old clerks at gas stations? No, but we've got to get this thing in shape.
Before Ohio can start evaluating, the leader's eyes are on D.C. At the Ohio State House, I'm Morgan Trow reporting.
So yeah, obviously folks got to stay engaged with your state level politics. You got to call into your state representatives, let them know what you think about all of this stuff. Let them know your personal testimony with cannabis or with hemp. Call them, email them, text them, show up to their office. If you're within the Columbus region, go to the State House. All you need is, you don't even need an ID, I don't think, to get into the State House. But you can go meet with your state representative. You can call them, call your state senators. Obviously, we got John Husted and Bernie Moreno. So, I don't know. I don't. If you a red Republican and you swing that way, I mean, if you're a Democrat, you gotta let them know. You know what I mean? You don't gotta let them know that you're a Democrat. You just let them know, hey, I'm your constituent. You work for me. I pay your bills. You know what I mean? Like, they work for you. Like, they don't work for the oil and gas companies they were supposed to work for you. So unless you speak up, you know what I mean? Because the wealthy people, they go to speak up. You know what I mean? And they're the ones that typically run the corporations, the entities that are controlling what these politicians do, right? You got to understand the big push right now. The reason they're doing this is because sales for alcohol is down, right? Since I've been helping promote App Girls Cannabis, and listening to some of the calls from the restaurants, from the bars, from the grocery stores, people not going to buy alcohol as much anymore. You know what I mean? And now that THC hemp beverages are an option, a lot of people are coming to bars, and taking the alternative. You know what I mean? And so you got to understand that wrench in the big ass alcohol industry, when they're producing probably, so many barrels of just product, right? How much, we got a Bud Light factory right here in Columbus, Ohio, Anheuser-Busch factory, right next to the bottling company, right? So you got to think, how many cans are they producing with the projections of this is what we about to sell at these bars, at these restaurants, at these sporting events. And now there's a backlog. Now we can't sell this alcohol as much, right? Now we can't sell it for the same price. And then there's a competitor with, these THC beverages. So a lot of people got to think we live in the micro, but you also got to think macro, right? You got to think big business, pharmaceutical industry, right? All these pharmaceutical companies. Again, now that cannabis is legalizing nationwide, people have opportunities and alternatives. Now that you have the hemp farm bill, cannabis may be illegal in your state, but you can order it through the mail. You know what I mean? You can order some hemp through the mail, and then they can't determine if it's hemp or weed or cannabis, right? Because they look the same. So the hemp bill really threw the wrench in the whole system, which was one of the best things that that came out of Biden's administration. One other thing that I think would have been dope that I don't think ended up being passed was the non-compete. They wanted to get rid of like the non-compete clauses. That would have been fucking major too for a lot of people. But cannabis is, we have to understand, cannabis is a civil right, right? So once they legalize it, it's a civil right. Like, it's your right to be able to medicate yourself how you see fit, right? And if you're medicating through cannabis and now they want to make you a felon for it, you have senior citizens now that have medical cards or that use cannabis recreationally. You have all of these companies that have been started now that have put millions of dollars into the system that have create jobs. So you can't just shut it down, right? Like, you done started the beast now. You know what I mean? But again, it's people still need to understand, like, we need more forward thinking, progressive people in positions of power and influence. Because again, a lot of these politicians are older, right? They don't fucking know. Like, they still on the old wave. It's a bunch of old white dudes. A bunch of old conservative white dudes. You know what I mean? Pegging each other. Like, the fuck they know. Like, we gotta get them out of there. Get him out of there. But I mean, it's like, I never was like a political person, right? Like, politics was always in everything that I did. Like, my parents would be like, in sports, it's politics. You go from one youth sports program to this youth sports program to this high school or this school to this team to this high school to this college. And you like, yo, politics is everywhere. Politics is literally in everything that we do. And some form of politics is controlling the levers of these institutions and organizations and how we operate and move amongst people, where the money is going and shit like that. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. Like, when you look at all these data centers and shit that they just, 50-year, 100-year tax abatement on capital gains. Plus, you got a grant or a loan from the state's nonprofit, because Ohio has a nonprofit that it operates that is giving these loans to companies for workforce development. Do your research. Jobs Ohio is called. It's a workforce development nonprofit basically operating from the state that has billions of dollars to allocate to corporations, essentially, for projects and shit. And that money is going to, that one, what this shit called, the drone company that they just gave Buddy that be showing up in flip-flops. Arsenal? Is it called Arsenal? But they giving hella money. I'm like, bruh, there's people in Ohio fucked up on all sides of the spectrum. The roads, the bridges, the infrastructure, and y'all giving this money to these dudes that ain't doing it? Well, it's jobs. No, it's not. They're bringing jobs from outside for construction, and then a data center only needs 10 to 15 to 20 people to run them shits. The construction for the concrete, the foundation, all of that shit, that's what you need people for. Building the walls, building the infrastructure, right? The tech folks to get everything wired up, the water folks, the energy folks. Once that shit is up and running, all them people leave. And they just gave them all that money. Meta, Google, Amazon Web Services. I'm out here by New Albany. I already know. Let's see if there's any Ohio DCC. But yeah, thank y'all for showing love, man. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you want to come on the show, let me know. Send an invite. I want to hear what people got to say from the streets. See if there's any updates from the Ohio Department of Cannabis Control November 5th, 2025. So far, we have 37 certificates of operation, 23 level 1 dual use certificates of operations for cultivators, 14 level 2 processors. Oh, let me bring this up on the screen for y'all. My bad. So y'all can see what I'm talking about. So this is the Ohio Department of Commerce's website, com.ohio.gov. So this is public knowledge, public information. Anybody can go check this stuff out. Processors, 46 certificates of operations, testing labs, 8 total testing labs. Dispensaries, 180 dual use certificates of operations. I'll go ahead and pull up a map for y'all so folks can see where we at. Oh, my bad. So here's the Ohio map with all the dispensaries. Yeah. Got my zoom all off. So as y'all can see, there's still hella like spots in, obviously your main areas, Columbus, you got your most dispensaries, and then you got Cincinnati area, and then you have up in Cleveland. But if you look at a lot of Ohio, I mean, there's a lot of counties. I mean, there's over 88 counties. There's 88 counties in the state. So you still got a bunch of counties. Obviously, these are like farm towns and shit like that don't have dispensaries. Or probably cultivators. But also when it talks about hemp, you know what I mean? A lot of these farmers didn't convert to hemp. So as you can see, a lot of these areas still don't have any dispensaries, which is, there's a lot of room for growth. So here you go. Physicians, there's 530 certificates to recommend. Patients and caregivers, you have 206,698 recommendations, 462,197 registered patients, 26,067 patients with veteran status, 26,829 patients with indignant status, 1,556 patients with a terminal diagnosis, 93,203 patients with both an active registration and an active recommendation, 442,061 unique patients who purchased medical marijuana as reported by ORS by licensed dispensaries. As of 10/15/2025, 42,143 registered caregivers. Sales figures as of 11/01/2025. Medical sales began January 14th, 2019. Non-medical sales began August 6th, 2024. So you have your non-medical sales, pounds of plant material, 147,233 pounds. Medical, 336,071 pounds, for a total of 483,291 pounds of plant material. And then you have your manufactured product. And then you have your product sales, $923,600,777 for non-medical sales, almost at $1 billion. And then medical sales, you have $2,261,161,503 for a grand total of $3,184,763,317 in total product sales in the state of Ohio when it comes to the legal cannabis industry for medical and adult use sales. Plant sales average per 10th OZ, $17.84. Plant sales average per gram, $6.30. Manufactured sales average, $25.72. So that's your state level data. State of Ohio, obviously we have home grow in Ohio, so obviously that's not accounted for. Hemp sales is not accounted for in that. That is just strictly sales from the state licensed dispensaries and cultivators. So let me know what you guys think about that. Let me know what you guys think about anything happening when it comes to cannabis policy, politics, If cannabis has had an impact on your life, positive or negative, I'd love to hear it. I think more people need to be comfortable and confident sharing their story, not feeling like a victim or not feeling like a criminal for whether you indulge, whether you donate cannabis, whatever, whether you grow it. I don't think people should feel like criminals for taking care of themselves. And so, but it's going to take all of us, you know what I mean? It's going to take a lot of people to put their differences aside, because we're living in a time where it's scary for a lot of people, you know what I mean? And it's from my vantage point, it's a lot of people that don't have, and I feel like there's a lot of opportunities in cannabis to heal a lot of communities economically, but also spiritually. Um, so I think it's important that we have these open dialogues and conversations. I'll start having some more panels. Looking forward to having some more panel discussions live in person. Now that COVID's over and all that stuff, like once they told me COVID, I was like, stay 6 feet away from everyone. I'm still in COVID. You know what I mean? Like, that's why I started all these platforms, because it was like, I'm in COVID. I had a computer, I got my webcam, I got my phone, like I can operate. But I think it's important to be in community as well with people. So I got some events that I've been planning to roll out here in the near future in Columbus through my nonprofit. Please go support our nonprofit, Green Environmental Outreach, GEO nonprofit. They are the umbrella in which I do the work to service community. And so we can receive donations, tax deferred donations through there. So if you appreciate the work that we do here at Ohio Cannabis Report, you can support me and through the nonprofit. I'm the president of the nonprofit. And so that would greatly help the work that we do. I'll take you out to the website quick so y'all can see it on the. So yeah, this is the website, GEO Nonprofit. We are a grassroots 501c3 nonprofit based in Springfield, Ohio. Right now, we're partnered with Central State University in their agriculture program and their hemp program, in the extension program. So some of the things that we focus on: community health and wellness, environmental sustainability and education, resource distribution and community support, advocacy and leadership development. Here's our one of our board members, Dr. Craig, who is over the hemp program at Central State. Actually, I'll play this.
This for agriculture and medicinal uses. So hello, I am Dr. Craig Schlettenhofer. I am the Research Assistant Professor of Natural Products at Central State University. My primary focus is on the genetics and biochemistry of cannabis for agriculture and medicinal uses. So the crop I work with is primarily hemp. The hemp that you see here today is grown for its metabolites. We call it metabolite hemp or essential oil hemp. Some people just call it CBD hemp, but we're really beyond just looking at CBD as these metabolites at this point in time. There's a lot of interest in other cannabinoids as well as the terpene component. And so these are all CBD varieties. So there's 3 different varieties and there's duplicates of each one within this field. And so this is a crop that's really going to be planted in June. Then it's going to start flowering in around mid to late August. And then within, about 5 weeks or so, the flowers are going to be ready for harvesting. They're going to be typically hand harvested because there's a general lack of mechanized equipment to do so, although that is being developed by some companies at this point in time. But once that's harvested, it's going to be dried, and it'll either go to an extraction or used raw in smokable, what we call smokable hemp products or premium hemp products. And so both of the extracts and those smoked products are typically being used for medicinal purposes, even though those claims haven't been validated by the FDA. There's a lot of anecdotal evidence as well as some clinical studies suggesting that CBD and these other metabolites have various medicinal benefits. And so that's really what this market's oriented at, is using this crop for those particular properties. Common things that, again, aren't approved by the FDA but are being used for is either just general wellness, anxiety, pain, things like that. And so it'll be interesting to see how that goes forward as an industry. But that's the main use for this particular type of crop. And so here we're doing research on the metabolite hemp, just to understand its chemistry better, to understand its production better, and really look at some of these factors as they relate to the regulatory aspects of the crop. Yeah, so the end product for metabolite hemp crop is going to be typically the flower. Some people collect that flower individually, either from cutting the whole plant and then drying it and then cutting the flower off, or cutting the flower off and drying that separately. Other people will harvest the whole plant and then they'll strip the leaves and the flower off and use that. Typically, the fibrous stalk material is excluded, although there's some more mechanized methods that do incorporate that as well, just because they can't easily separate that from the product, and so then you're extracting what includes some of the stalk material as well. Yeah, so there's three kind of main crops for hemp, and how you grow them really depends on which of those crops you're after as your primary crop. Some people have tried combining and doing what's called dual or triple cropping systems, but the three main cropping systems are either for the metabolites, for grain, or for fiber, and they're all going to be grown differently. The metabolites, as again seen here, are typically grown far apart. These rows are extra far apart just for research purposes. Normally this rows would only be about 4 to 5 feet apart, and the plants would be 4 to 5 feet apart within rows. They're going to get very bushy, and that's because you're after that flower material. Whereas the grain is going to be planted at a much higher density. You're looking somewhere around 500,000 plants per acre. They're going to grow to about ideally 4 to 6 feet tall, 5 feet really being that ideal height you're looking at, because you're going to come through with a combine and cut below those flower heads to harvest that grain when it's ready. And if you get that too tall, you can't get that combine head up high enough to avoid all the fibrous stalk material, which tends to get caught around the gears within the combine, and it could cause things like combine fires and gear malfunctions. The fiber, on the other hand, you're planting even higher density than the grain. You're looking at well over 1 million plants per acre, upwards to 1.5 million plants per acre. And there you're trying to get the plants to grow thin stalks but as tall as possible, and so you're really trying to force that competition between plants to make them grow tall, get those real long fibers, so you don't want those branches involved as you do with the CBD and metabolite crops where you get more flowers that way. Fiber, you just want a long continuous fiber the entire length of the stalk, and so you're trying to force that competition for them to grow up and very tall. And so you want something that's over 10 feet tall in those crops. It could get up to 15 foot tall in some countries, and that's really what we need to push for a good sustainable fiber production system in the U.S. to get the yield that we need. To make a crop financially feasible and the amount of area you would need, again, depends on those types of crops that you're looking at. It's going to take substantially more land area for grain and fiber systems than it is for a metabolite system. Ohio has regulations that require a minimum of 1/4 of an acre and 1,000 plants. And so typically if you're growing for metabolites, those 1,000 plants are going to get you probably more up to about 1/2 acre in size instead of 1/4 acre. And there's various reasons those requirements were put in place. As far as the financial potential for this crop, it's constantly changing, and we're really, as more states come online with production, including Ohio, which this is really our first year of commercial production. Last year there was a big price drop because of so many more states coming online, and they were interested in producing these CBD and these metabolite crops, that there was an oversupply, and not a corresponding increase in demand. And so those prices really dropped, and they've remained fairly low this year. And so the amount of land that's going to be profitable is very hard to predict. There's a lot of information that we still need to know about this crop at this point in time. There's also a lot of variability in how this crop is done. And so, as you can see with this crop, there's no plastic laid down between the rows to keep the weeds down. Other people put the plastic down. That alone adds cost, and so those costs are all factor up in everybody's systems on drying and harvesting, and how much labor is required for that really makes it very difficult at this point in time to predict the economics of the crop and to say, okay, this is going to be a profitable crop for you. It really requires a lot of personal research and fitting that into your existing cropping system, and that's something that is absolutely essential each and every grower does themselves, because it could very well be more expense than you would make, especially since those prices have dropped from what people had been hearing of making $20,000–$30,000 an acre. That's no longer the case, and it's unlikely that those prices are ever going to return, that it's going to be that profitable. And so it's coming down, and we're finding what that actual market value is going to be at, and we're still discovering that, so it's very, very difficult to predict at this point in time. As far as where the market demand is and what we need to do to improve that, and whether there's growers that have gotten into hemp are going to stay in hemp or leave because of the prices, we're figuring all of that out. That's as an industry. And one of the things I guess I'll start with on that is, as far as consumer awareness, I think there is a need for more consumer awareness. There's particularly a need for consumer awareness on differentiating hemp and, quote, marijuana products, or products that have more than that 0.3 limit of percent THC limit, which defines hemp from what is legally classified as marijuana. A lot of people refer to that as just cannabis at this point in time for its technical name. But legally there is that distinction. And so there's a lot of consumers that don't understand that differentiation, and that hemp is not a intoxicating plant, whereas quote, marijuana would be. And so there is a need for that consumer awareness. There is eventually going to be a cap on how much is actually needed by the industry. As with any crop, you can't just produce a indefinite supply of it. We see this with corn and soybeans. A lot of times growers are left with waiting for better market prices to try to sell their crop. But there they can generally sell their crop. Here, really, you need a contract, ideally with somebody to sell it to up front, more like a tobacco system, or a small vegetable system where you have an outlet for what you're producing, because you can't just take it down to the grain elevator and sell it, and so you're not necessarily guaranteed to get paid for it. So consumer awareness is could help with that to an extent. I think really diversifying uses for the crop, particularly for the metabolites, are going to be useful going forward, and that's something that we really need to look at as an industry, is what other applications we have for these medicinal type plants. The amount of labor required to grow hemp is quite extensive, especially for the metabolite side. For the grain and fiber side, it can be more mechanized, and so the labor requirement there is less, but particularly for the metabolite production, you're looking at typically, for most growers, a similar labor requirement as a tobacco crop. It's very labor intensive. You got a lot of weeding, but really there's a transplanting out in the spring that requires some labor. A lot of people use old tobacco or vegetable setters to do that. That is a relatively smaller component of the labor requirement. Most comes on the back end with the harvesting and the drying and the stripping to remove those flower material off. And so that could take a lot of time and is a big labor cost, and that's why people are really interested in mechanizing those particular steps. This is my specialty. I've been working with it since 2014 at this point, so it'd be 6 growing seasons at least. So I've been working with this crop a lot. I started at Central State last year, and I was hired to bring that expertise to the state from Kentucky, where I was working previously. So feel free to reach out to me, or feel free to reach out to Central State Extension, who could put you in contact with me if they can't answer the questions that you may have. We do have a couple extension bulletins up discussing different growing requirements for the 3 different crops that can be found on our website as well as the ODA website. And we also have a second extension bulletin that we're working on getting out that we have finalized. We just need to get it more readily available, looking at what factors that you need to consider as if you're looking at growing hemp as a crop, and what to kind of expect as you go forward and need to do to get started off on the right foot.
Wow. So shout out to Dr. Craig. Like I said, Dr. Craig is a board member on our nonprofit, Green Environmental Outreach. So I am the president of Green Environmental Outreach. Here's our team right here. You can see that's me right there when I have my long hair. These are all our different partners. This is in our garden. So we do a lot of different projects, community cleanups, community gardens, healthcare events, free healthcare events for the communities. And so any type of support that we get goes right back into the community. I'm not on salary or anything like that. So any type of support is greatly appreciated. Liking, sharing, showcasing what we're doing. I try to do as much work as I can with what I know. So I'm always looking to build a team and bring people in around me that can help us elevate the voices of the communities that we serve. So if you do have a skill, if you do have a talent that you think could be useful to our mission and initiative, please reach out. We are a veteran-led and founded organization. We are inclusive and diverse. So we're led by Black men, and we have women on our staff, on our team. We're diverse in age. Again, I'm not that old. You know what I mean? I'm 36. So I'm a president, which makes me a leader of our organization in a public way. So, you know, it just goes to show that our team is tapped into what's going on. But I need help. I need support. And I want to put people on too, because I understand how to get shit done. Understand how to get into certain spaces. But you also have to have a vehicle sometimes to do that. So if there's anybody out there looking for opportunities, career opportunities to get started, an internship, young professional looking for volunteer opportunities, please reach out. I need help with events, social media, the website, fundraising. Because I mean, a lot of it's fundraising, a lot of it's getting the word out there, you know, talking about a lot of the issues that we deal with in underserved communities. But that's why we also talk about cannabis, because it's also sits at the intersection of a lot of these socioeconomic issues. So I think we're on an hour. Yeah, we're on an hour. So I want to appreciate y'all for tapping in. Please make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe to the Ohio Cannabis Report channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all that jazz. Write me an email, ohiocannabisreport@gmail.com, and we will share your story. Again, go ahead and cop Courage in Cannabis. Courage in Cannabis by Dr. Bridget Williams, a board-certified cannabis doctor here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. You can cop that on Amazon. There's 2 books. This is the second book. It's also a free ebook. So if you want to do an ebook, it's free. If you want to cop from me, hit me up. $20 from me. I'll sign it. Write a little note in there for you. So Again, thank you guys for all the love and support. Peace. Have a blessed day. All right, we out of there.